Hello and welcome. My name is Cara Snyder. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Associate Director of Alumni Engagement at UC Santa Cruz. And I'm also an alumnus, Crown College class of 2006. Thanks for joining us today. Today's workshop will be led by career coaches from FlexJobs in collaboration with Alumni Engagement and the Career Success Office at UCSC. And we aim to equip you with the tools to prepare for your interview for a remote job. After today's event, we hope that you fill out the quick on-screen survey that will pop up after the webinar. And so I'd like to introduce our presenters. Tracy Capuzzoli has an education specialist degree in career and mental health counseling and a Master of Science in Counseling and Human Services. She's an experienced remote career coach with expertise in career pivots and job seeking, with professional experience in higher education, nonprofits, government and independent contracting, and private sector agencies. She also has a military spouse. Sydney Work has a master's degree in education specializing in college student personnel and a bachelor's of science in journalism focused on strategic communications and public relations. She is a skilled career coach with professional experience in higher education, meeting and event management, and public relations advertising. We're so excited to have our FlexJobs career coaches with us today. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to them.
Awesome. Thank you so much for introducing us, Cara. I am so excited to be here along with Tracy. And really quick, let me go ahead and just get my screen shared here for you so we can start the webinar. Awesome. So today we are going to be talking about preparing for remote job interviews. And like Cara mentioned, Tracy and I are both career coaches at FlexJobs. So topics we'll cover today: phone and video interviews, what to expect, common interview questions for remote jobs, how you can best prepare for your interview, and then what ways you can practice those video interviews. For those of you that may not be familiar with FlexJobs, we are a membership site focused on helping job seekers. So job seekers are our main kind of client. You as a job seeker would pay to use our site as opposed to employers. And we are dedicated to all things flexible work. So that can be freelance and temporary, flexible hours, part-time hours, telecommuting, remote, basically anything that's outside of that traditional 9 to 5 in the office environment. And that's what all of the jobs on our site are made up of. So some of them may be 100% remote, some may be partial remote, some may be full-time, part-time, et cetera. Kind of the wide range of functions there. And we do have over 55,000 vetted companies that post jobs on our site, with about 20 to 25,000 jobs posted every single day. We have a dedicated team of job researchers that actually go out, research the jobs, vet the jobs, ensure that they're legitimate companies, they're not scams. And there are at least 3 different people at FlexJobs who look at that job posting, look at that company before it's actually posted on our site. So what makes us a little bit different from other job boards, other job sites, is that we're kind of controlling what's posted there. We're making sure it's legit, it's not a scam, it meets all of our criteria and standards. And it's not just anyone who can, post a job there. If employers do want to post a job on our site, they have to kind of go through the same vetting process as well. So that's what makes us a little bit different, is we kind of take all of that time and research away from you as the job seeker and put it all out there on our site for you to easily search for a flexible job. And as of today, since 2007, we have helped over 5.3 million job seekers successfully find work. So before COVID even happened, we've been doing this for a while and we've been successful at it. And it's now just continuing to grow with everything that has happened with the pandemic. And we're excited that more companies are now seeing the importance of flexible work as well. So that's just a little bit about FlexJobs. And Tracy and I are both career coaches on the team. That is something that FlexJobs members have access to. So in addition to webinars like these, we offer weekly 30-minute coaching sessions twice a week for FlexJobs members. We do career coaching, individual one-on-one 30-minute sessions. We do resume reviews or a combination of both. So that's just Another example of what makes us a little bit different from other sites is that this is an added service that comes at a discounted rate for FlexJobs members that you'd be paying a lot more if you weren't a part of our site to access these services. So that's a bit about us. So, what to expect when it comes to remote or virtual job interviewing, basically anything that's not at a physical location. There are a couple different options for interviews. The most common that we've seen are going to be phone, video, one-way video, and pre-employment testing. Basically, if you're not going on site somewhere to interview for a position, these are kind of going to be the most common ways for you to conduct those interviews. Phone interview, pretty self-explanatory, just on the phone. Video interview, same thing, usually conducted via Zoom or Skype, usually those platforms, Microsoft Teams, pretty easy. One-way video, however, is a new trend that we're seeing employers use. And that is actually going to be you getting some sort of link where the questions are computerized or asked via the computer, or maybe there's just a written prompt. And then you hit record and you actually record yourself just talking to the computer. There are a couple ways, there are a couple of reasons why employers use one-way videos. One, it's a little bit more efficient, as opposed to having a human there asking you the questions, scheduling that time. If there's a job that has a lot of applicants, this is an easy way for them to get a lot of people interviewed without them having to take the personal time to go ahead and do it. The other reason why employers are using one-way video is because they actually want to see how well you do with technology as well. So since remote work and technology and being comfortable with things like Zoom and Skype and Microsoft Teams is becoming more common, they want to see in that interview right away that you're already familiar with these tools, already comfortable using them, and don't have any issues kind of setting up the technology. Now, when it comes to something like a one-way video, it may seem a little weird that you're talking to a computer and you're not talking to a human, but this can actually be something that's an advantage to you because you generally get a little bit more time in between questions to think about how you want to respond. It might be a prompt, tell us about yourself, why you're interested in this position. You get a minute or two and then you can hit record. So you kind of get a little bit more time to think about your answer and practice, what it is that you want to say, as opposed to interviewing with a human and having to think up something on the spot. So even though one-way videos might be a little bit intimidating, they can actually be an advantage as well. Now, what we do suggest is if there is an option for practicing, sometimes there will be a test link or one or two practice questions, definitely recommend doing that. If there's not an option for that, something that we recommend is pulling up Zoom if you have it or something like that, and pretending that you're going to join a meeting and just watching yourself on camera to see kind of how you look. I talk with my hands a lot, so that's something I'm always cognizant of when I'm doing those interviews. And another great tool that we actually recommend is LinkedIn's mock interview tool. If you are on LinkedIn, this is a great resource. It is for all LinkedIn members. You don't have to have a premium account to access it. And it's about 24 questions that LinkedIn has compiled, basic interview questions. Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses, et cetera. And you can actually record yourself on this LinkedIn mock interview tool, practice answering the question, and then get AI automatic feedback on how you did. Now, there are some features that are a bit beyond that. You can get actual human feedback if you are a premium member, but the free version is just as great to kind of record yourself and see how you're doing. So if you feel like you need some of that practice, you haven't done a one-way video interview before, that's definitely something that we recommend is trying out the LinkedIn mock interview tool. Pre-employment testing is another trend that we are seeing a lot of employers use. And pre-employment testing can be a wide variety of things. It can be a skills test. It can be a timed assessment. It could be a case study. It could be a personality assessment. There's kind of a wide range of pre-employment testing that we've seen, and it can happen anytime throughout the process. It could be before you even get a phone or video interview as kind of a pre-screener. It could be in the middle of the process, or it could be your final round. So something else that you need to kind of be ready for is any sort of pre-employment testing, and employers are using this to make sure that you actually know how to do what it is that you're saying you're doing. For example, if you're in public relations, they might have you write a mock press release, or if you're wanting to be a consultant, they might send you a case study that you have 30 minutes to work on or something along those lines. So we do have some links on pre-employment testing that I believe will be sent to you all as well, if not in the chat today, that kind of goes over all of those different examples and how to kind of prepare for them, and just know that you might be expected to do some of those things. So as you can see, there are a lot of different interview options when it comes to virtual or remote interviewing. And the best thing you can do to be prepared is just practice, 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 and make sure that you're reading all of the instructions. That's another thing that employers are going to be looking for, is that whatever it is they're sending you, if it's a one-way video or pre-employment testing, that you are going to be prepared, and that you know what you're doing and that you're following those instructions. So just kind of be prepared for that. And that is kind of everything I just talked about there. And now Tracy will talk a little bit about some of those common interview questions that you'll be asked in remote jobs.
Sorry, my light's a little bright. Okay, so now we're going to move into talking about common interview questions for remote jobs. So let's move on into those. Next slide, please, Sydney. Thank you. Okay, so these may be questions that you will be asked by the employer. And we're going to focus mainly on, as for the meaning of today's webinar, remote employment questions. So this is not necessarily for traditional interviewing, though some of these questions there may be an overlap, but generally this is focused more towards remote or flex work interviewing. Okay, so most common questions. Why do you want to work remotely? Let me bring that over, I'm sorry. So particularly with this question, this tends to be one of the more popular ones. You're going to want to try to create a connection between yourself and that company. What is it that attracted you to this company, to this position? So particularly, you're going to want to focus on what's going to bring you together. You don't necessarily want to focus on the aspects of working remotely, whether that be telecommuting, working virtually, that being something you might have been doing at the moment because of the pandemic, but rather what it is that interests you about this position. So focus more on the company, the culture, and tie it back to some of your remote flex-friendly skills. And you'll hear me talk a lot about flex-friendly skills, and examples of flex-friendly skills, I'll say that 3 times, will be excellent written and verbal communication, highly organized, that you're self-initiating, you're proactive, that you are time and task managed, comfortable in those environments, and also that you are technology savvy. So those are some top things that you're going to want to bring into why do you want to work remotely, and tie it back to the mission of the company, as well as some of your flex-friendly skills. You're going to want to steer away from situations or questions and answers that deal with maybe you've been working remotely and you have young children at home because of the pandemic, and this would be a way for you to incorporate the two. That is a work-life balance situation, and a lot of people really are searching for that at this time. However, that's not the intent or focus of this question. It always needs to come back to the company and what you can provide that company. For the question that deals with why you're attracted to this position, you're going to want to parlay into why you want to work remotely to what attracted it to you. So a lot of people, and this is very common for the clients that Sydney and I work with, have really enjoyed working remotely because of the pandemic. Others we have also seen really don't, and those people are ready to go back to an office environment. But others that do, they know that their position may be returning remotely, and so they're avidly looking for a pivot into a new position that will allow them to continue working remotely. So with that being said, you're going to want to, again, convey your excitement and enthusiasm for this position, what's drawn you to it, and it needs to go beyond the fact that you're just going to be working remotely. So you have to bring it back to your flex-friendly skills, your transferable skills, and again, what you're going to bring to that company. Motivation. Being proactive and being motivated. Those are some top skills and top traits that employers are going to be looking for in remote workers. So you're going to want to convey to that employer that you know how to maintain motivation and how to still be enthused or enthusiastic about the work that you're completing. You're going to want to mention that you can prioritize your tasks, that you can create structure in your day, and that you're a proactive communicator. You know, a lot of people, again, are working remotely. Students are learning remotely. So these are skills that we had to quickly learn back in March, April, and they're ones that we are honing and getting more involved in. So bring it back to that. And show that you're proactive, and again, enhance and talk further about your flex-friendly skills, that you're an excellent verbal and written communicator, that you are a proactive communicator, that you are self-initiating, and that you are able to maintain motivation while being isolated. So we're going to go ahead and move to the next slide, please, Sydney. Okay, here are some other questions that may be coming up. And I do know that Paulina has some resources, particularly pertaining to these two slides that she will be putting up for you in the chat. So the top one, what do you anticipate as your biggest challenge as a remote worker? Start thinking about this question as the employer's greatest weakness question, but with a little bit of a twist. So candidates who may not actually think of obstacles or who don't have any experience with obstacles in working remotely may never have worked remotely, or they may be viewing working remotely through rose-colored glasses. A lot of that, I will say, has probably gone by the wayside given the pandemic. And those that have enjoyed working remotely, as I said earlier, are actively looking for remote work. So be realistic, be honest. Remote employers who have a solid, steadfast remote work culture will be actively looking for remote workers who have experience and who can convey that. Those that don't have experience, if you can convey your flex-friendly skills and your transferable skills that are pertaining to that position, they will also be looking for that as well. So be honest about some of the pitfalls. Some common pitfalls are, again, motivation, distractions, being engaged, and having technical difficulties. You kind of get to become a little bit of a guru as a remote worker. So there are times where Zoom, just as we've experienced today, makes changes. And you get to log in and realize you have a totally new platform that you have to quickly adjust to and change. There are also times where the internet gets bogged down, and there may be moments that your server just stops working and you have to bounce to a hotspot. So knowing how to think quickly and be adaptable is going to help you as a remote worker. And you're going to want to be able to state that when answering this question. Particularly when it gets to the question, do you have previous experience working remotely? That's great for people who actually do have that experience. For those that are learning that today, we are realizing that more workers are gaining that experience as well as students. So when listing out some of the platforms that you have been working on and that you've been engaging with, please consider if you are in a co-op or an internship or even in a hybrid or 100% virtual class, incorporate in those platforms that you're working with, Canvas, Google Classrooms, Moodle, any of the others that are out there as well. And that will then show that you are comfortable working in those environments. Okay, Sydney, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next question. Our slide, sorry. Okay, so this one is going to be asking about behavioral questions. And the purpose of this is for the employer to really get a sense of your style, your working style. They really want to take a look at your strengths, and it allows them to get to know you on a deeper level. So in order to answer these questions, you're going to want to move into creating a picture, a visualization, where you can create a situation, a task, an action, and a result. So that stands for STAR. You're going to go with the STAR method. This can be a situation that happened in a volunteer experience, in a classroom project, or even in a work situation. It does not have to be through paid positions for you to create these opportunities. So you're going to want to think of a situation. So an example might be, describe a time when you had experience where you had experience with conflict on a team, and how did you resolve it? So that situation might be you were tasked to implement a new project management system. And then from there, that meant you had to coordinate with several teams. And unfortunately, there was difficulty between two team members that had been longstanding, and you knew that they would have to work closely together on this project. So a task, or the T part of it, would be, okay, how are you going to create forward momentum? And that might be that you created a timeline where you were able to see where these two people would come together. The action, you would bring them together, have them talk about it, find a way for you to be involved if need be as a neutral party, and then always bring in the flex-friendly skills, where you then took notes and went back and sent very clear, concise communication between the meetings of these parties, so that everything was handled appropriately, professionally, and everyone agreed on what was said. And then that ends with the results. And the results may be that the project was brought in on time and then has increased whatever the purpose of that project was by 20% over the first and second quarter. So whenever you're using the STAR method, always bring it back to what's the situation, what's your task, what's your action, and what was the result. There will be several times that you get asked this question. So think of 3 to 5 answers. Create these scenarios, kind of craft them out. If you need to, you can actually craft out what you're actually going to say. You can practice that through the LinkedIn mock interview platform that Sydney had mentioned earlier. And then that way you get a sense of what you're saying, how you're conveying it, and if you actually are using the STAR method. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move forward to the next question, the next slide. Okay, questions to ask. This is a very important piece of remote work and remote interviewing. So every company that has a remote work culture right now, and that is interviewing, some may be new and some may be more well-established. So you're going to want to ask, what is your onboarding process like? Are you going to provide training? What are the remote collaboration tools that you use? What does a successful remote worker look like for you? Companies that are functioning in the pandemic should be able to answer these questions. And for those that are looking for 100% remote, these questions might be very important for you to gauge whether or not you'll want to move forward with that opportunity. For those that are looking for remote back into a work from office where you have to go back to a physical environment, they should be aware that some of these questions they should be able to answer, but they may still also be changing. Companies that have had to quickly create a work from home environment are learning, and they've had their pitfalls and they've had their growth moments. And so now they're taking that into account. So be very clear with the questions that you ask on what is expected of you, how you'll be evaluated, what does the communication look like. They should be able to answer it. And they should also be able to tell you honestly that this is where we are, this is what we've learned, and this is what we're moving towards. If they can't answer these questions, then that's something for you to consider if that's a place you want to move forward with in terms of employment. Next slide. Okay, we're going to talk about how to prepare. So preparing for your video interview. So always take into account that when you get to this point, that company has actually reached that point that they are actually visualizing you in this role. So this is great. So carry that confidence with you through your preparation and into the actual interview. That makes it so much easier. There will be moments where you're going to be nervous, that you're going to need to take a step and you're going to need to breathe, and that's okay. But always remember, you made it through the first part, so now you're into the actual preparation. So research, always do your research. Glassdoor, to take a look to see whether or not any employees or former employees have listed what the interview process looks like. Tips and suggestions, talking points. If there is a way that you can find out who the recruiter or the interviewer might be, do your research on them as well. Try to find them on their social media platforms, whether that be more than LinkedIn. Also consider looking to see if they have a Twitter feed, if what their Instagram looks like. Get a sense of not only the company, but also the interviewer if possible. Outline, prepare your talking points. You don't have to necessarily create a script. Some people really do better with a script where they can then practice, like through that LinkedIn mock interview system through LinkedIn, or if you guys have an opportunity to do mock interviews through your alumni program here at UCSC, definitely take advantage of those opportunities. See how you sound when answering the questions. See if you're actually looking at the camera. That's a very important part. Practice out loud. Practice in front of your mirror. Turn your webcam on. If you don't know how on the iMac, you can always go to the photo booth app. And I believe on a regular PC, they also have other apps that you can download as well. So get comfortable in front of technology, in front of other screens. If need be, you can create a Zoom meeting and go ahead and Zoom yourself and turn your webcam on that way. And then you'll always have the opportunity to revise what you're saying, what the presentation looks like, the lighting, things like that. Okay. For those that are coming into students who are recently graduating or coming up on graduation, I do want to let you know that we are finding that remote jobs are increasing. And they are coming onto our site at a regular basis. So even though we're in the middle of the pandemic and we don't exactly know how it's going to continue playing out, we do see that remote work is slowly growing and it is maintaining a steadiness. We have noticed that we do track about, I think, 25 different job categories. And we do see that about 7 particular categories have greatly increased. So people are making pivots. They're kind of really leaning on their transferable skills, or what we also call job functions, and moving into new industries and new sectors if possible. So for those top 7, we are seeing that competition is a little bit more fierce with job searching and with the interviewing. So being prepared is very important. For recent grads, if you have an opportunity to do an online remote internship, please jump at that. And if there's an opportunity for you to do any sort of online volunteering through volunteermatch.org, and I'll actually put that in the chat for Paulina. Please go ahead and get involved in that as well. Any opportunity for you to develop actual remote work experience that you can then use during an interview is excellent. It's one thing to definitely really focus on your flex-friendly skills and use those to help work with an employer and to let them know that you're motivated and that you can do it. It's another thing to actually have that experience. So We also are aware that some remote employers are looking for candidates that may not need as much training as others. So keep that in mind. And if need be, pay attention to the job and the job postings that you're reading. And if you start seeing certain remote collaboration tools come available or mentioned over and over, such as Slack, Sococo, Microsoft Teams, Google Drive, Google Meet, then go online and see if you can download those tutorials and work with them amongst your family and your friends for a week so that you can become more comfortable with them. You can also take a look at all of the free videos that are out there regarding these tools that would be put up on YouTube as well. Okay, next slide, Sydney. Okay, steps for success. We've talked a little bit about this already, but these are some things that you're going to want to take into account when doing your remote interview. So choose a quiet space if possible, remove your distractions, note the environment, and a little bit about the environment. We have noticed that conversation has come up, and it is a trend about customizing your background. So when you take a look at mine, this would be what they call the background. This is the new trend that we are seeing with remote work. So not only do you want to still dress appropriately for the interview as how it's going to match that company and that company's culture, consider the background as well. Regarding that, at the same time, steadfast rules are not in place with a background and customizing a background. So let's say you're going for a gaming design or gaming development program, and you're a really staunch fan of this company, and you have some game pieces from a previous game that is important to them, or was a vintage game. You can put some of those items in your background, but also be aware that not everybody has those things. And so we are watching and monitoring how that's going to play out in terms of creating a level playing field for remote videos. And that's something that could possibly happen. And if that is the case, then we are hoping that hiring managers and recruiters would actually say, we're going to have a customized background, and that will be the backdrop of your remote video, just to make it equal. Given the pandemic, a lot of personal and professional lives are merging. And so when you're logging in and creating these, having these video exchanges, people are starting to merge those together, and they're starting to look and explore. And during that time, who knows where that could go and what it could lead to in terms of unfair advantages that just are not right. So this is something that we're monitoring and we're aware of, and I just wanted to point that out to you as something to consider. Dress for success, test your tech, watch your body language, your eye contact, smile, always smile if you can. Show that you're a person. You can be a bit animated like Sydney is, using your hands. You definitely don't want to interrupt. You want to convey that you're connected, that you're involved in the conversation, and then always ask for questions and follow up. Find out how that remote interviewer wants to be connected. Are they willing to communicate via email? Are they willing to give you their phone number? See how they want to engage so that you can follow up and send your thank you letter. So just to kind of give a recap, always research your company and your interviewer if possible. Find out how they are on all social media platforms. Don't just rely on LinkedIn. People might have branched out beyond that and have a Twitter feeds, have Instagram. See ways that you can learn a little bit before you move into actually interviewing. Pick and evaluate your spot, watch your lighting, if possible. Find a time that best works for you, particularly when doing those one-way videos. If you find that you're more energized in the morning, do them in the morning when you're going to be more proactive, more confident about your answers. Always outline your answers and practice, and then follow up with a thank you letter. We do find that employers are actively looking for those, and that could be the thing that moves you forward versus someone else. As I said, the remote work world is growing. We are seeing positions that are coming aboard on a regular basis. And so you do want to put your best foot forward, you want to be involved, and you do need to know that the competition can be fierce and more competitive. And so you really need to dedicate the time to your remote interview at this time. So now it's time for questions. We did want to put this up that for any UCSC alumni member, we have up to 30% off of a FlexJobs membership. But now Sydney and I will move into Q&A portions. Sydney, did you want to come back on? Ah, there you are.
I got to unmute myself. Yes, thank you, Tracy. So I think we're going to get some questions and we'll kind of bounce off and provide some answers for y'all.
Great, thanks, y'all. So our first question comes from Lori. They're asking the question about the state of California, but maybe you could just speak to if this is different state to state. The question is, do you have any advice regarding or samples of statements of qualifications and the documents required for most jobs?
Oh, interesting question. So for states specifically, for remote jobs, you do still have to actually be physically located where companies are eligible to hire. So California, unfortunately, tends to be a tough one that some companies are not set up to hire in California. But due to tax and labor laws, it is important that you're still putting where you physically live and where you'll be performing the work when you are applying for a job. So if you're located in California and you see a remote position, but it says, you know, we only want people in North Carolina, Virginia, Texas, etc., it may not be because, you know, they don't like people from California or because they want you to come to the office or anything like that. It's just because they haven't gone through the kind of tax and labor laws to get set up there. California in particular, like I mentioned, is one of the tougher ones. And we can provide some resources about California specifically to send out afterwards. But just a note that if you are applying for remote positions, to be on the lookout for that position or for the location, I'm sorry, just because the companies do have to be set up to hire you. Like, for example, FlexJobs is only actually able to hire in about 14 states. So if I were to move to another state, I potentially would no longer be eligible for this position just because they're not set up there. So that is something that you're going to want to look out for. Now, sometimes it is because they do want you to be there for monthly or quarterly or semesterly meetings, or you have to go in the office from time to time. So if you do have questions, if it's your dream job and you know they don't list California as the state that they're hiring from, you can always reach out, like Tracy mentioned, either on LinkedIn or email to that hiring manager and to that recruiter and ask, you know, is this because of the tax and labor laws or is it because you physically need someone here? But unfortunately, if it is the tax and labor laws, there's nothing you could do. You could be so qualified, but if they're not set up, that's going to be the thing that kind of disqualifies you from that position. Yeah. Tracy, anything to add there?
We are aware and we have been tracking, because this has been a concern for a lot of our California-based clients, that AB5 law that, you know, came into effect in January. And with that in mind, employers that are hiring for California residences, that company, though let's say it's based in Massachusetts, is going to have to follow along the lines of that law. So if that company is reclassifying their employees from a 1099 contractor and they're required to make them a part-time employee, then that company that's based in Massachusetts is going to have to honor the California law. So just be aware that that is why location is important, and it is something that we're tracking.
Great, thanks, you too. Okay, our next question is experience with software such as WebEx and Microsoft Teams worth mentioning?
Yes, 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 yes. So not every, employers are different, and given Zoom and confidentiality things, not every employer is going to like Zoom or want to use Zoom. I do know here in the state of North Carolina, particularly for confidentiality reasons, a lot of the government military bases will only work with Microsoft Teams. And that's because they feel that those security protocols are higher with Microsoft Teams. So you definitely want to mention as many platforms that you have experience with on your resume. So let me go ahead and kind of pull up an example to show you what that might look like when talking about the technology section. Let me pull that up real quick. Okay. Okay, and I'm going to turn on my screen. Okay, can you guys see this?
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so when you're looking at down, particularly down here, I'm going to want you to, I don't like that one, sorry, this one, right in here, name this. Name it remote collaboration tools, and then you list them all there. You can even break it up into various different platforms if you want to. You can call it document software. If you're going for an office administration position, you could call it office productivity software. And then you can do additional. So this can get quite extensive. And that's why I said, if you've been working with Google Classrooms, or Canvas or Moodle, go ahead and put all of that in there. So yes, we do encourage that. Okay, so now I'll turn my screen off.
All right, our next question, it's more of a request. Can you say more about thank you letters?
Oh, yes. Yeah, I think we have some examples of that too. We might even have an article that we can send if it's not one of the links we did already. Thank you letters. So the question today a lot of times is handwritten or via email or via LinkedIn, or what's kind of the best way to do that. Typically email is going to kind of be your best bet, just because with a handwritten, even though those are nicer to receive, they're a little bit more personalized. You don't know how long it's going to take to get there, and you generally want to be sending that thank you note within 24 hours of your interview. So email is going to be the best method for sending those thank you notes. And if you had an interview with multiple people, you're going to want to send each of those people their own thank you note as well, kind of tailoring each to what that person may have brought into your conversation. And then it also doesn't hurt to sometimes send a quick thank you on LinkedIn if you're already connected there, or if you're not connected, that could be your connecting message of, hey, hiring manager, it was so great chatting with you today about this position. Would love to connect as I continue to get to know more about your company. You don't have to spend too much time on it, just a couple of paragraphs saying, thank you for your time, highlighting again what those things are that make you a great fit for that position, and then pinpointing why it is that you're excited about that position or that company specifically. That's a lot of times the kind of missing piece that people forget, is you're so excited about selling yourself that you're not highlighting why it is that you like them specifically. So making sure that as you're talking through that interview, oh, I love what you said about this thing of your company culture, or I love this new system that you all are using, or I love this thing that you all are working on, pinpointing something about that company that came up in your conversation, or something about what it is you'd be doing in that job. Like, oh, I would be so excited to get started working on building up the donor base, or creating this new program from scratch, highlighting something specific about the company and the role that you all talked about in that conversation. But definitely do those thank you notes, send it within 24 hours if possible, and you would be surprised how many people don't do them. So that is just one more thing that recruiters are saying really helps candidates stand out, that not everyone does.
Yeah, they're up there with cover letters. We're finding that, sometimes cover letters are optional, but as career coaches, they're not optional.
Yeah.
It is a great exercise when doing a cover letter for you to really think strategically about that job. Always comes back to that question of what attracted you to this position. And you can reiterate that in a cover letter, you can reiterate that in an interview, and you can reiterate that again in a thank you note. So there's 3 ways for you to answer that question and 3 ways for you to strategically kind of create a theme amongst all 3 aspects of that interview process. So we find that some hiring managers and recruiters really want a cover letter. It means something to them. And so you don't really know which recruiter you're getting, the one that wants it and the one that doesn't really care. So lean on the side of safety and do the cover letter. It's very important. And it's a great exercise for you to start thinking about this opportunity and why it matters to you and why you're of value to them.
Just want to echo that. Yeah, always, always, always what you offer the company and why you like them. Can't say that enough. All right, our next question is about cold calling recruiters. What can an individual expect? What type of relationship or engagement should they expect when cold calling recruiters?
So you can actually cold call a recruiter like through a phone call, you can do that, or you can also cold call in a way through an email to see whether or not they could set up a Skype and you could do a Zoom call. What you're going to want to do before you cold call is research the company, research who your connection might be, who you might be reaching out to, so that you are prepared. And think about what is the purpose of this communication. Ultimately, we all know that it's because you want to get a job. But you can't always make it so blatantly about, I want a job. Do you have a job? Hire me. It can't always be about that. So try to see if you have a connection in common. Maybe somebody that you know physically around you has put you in communication and you can do this cold call, if that's like via the phone, or maybe through LinkedIn you have a connection, or if you even follow them on Twitter and you like what they say. Maybe you've been targeting the company and the company is a dream company of yours. And now is the time for you to make a pivot. So at that point, then you're going to want to narrow it down to a department. What department do you want to be in? Who runs that department? How can you get in? And if it is a true third person contact, then you're going to want to send a message if you can, find their phone number, find their email. We do have some resources that we can provide you on finding emails so that you can craft a personalized introduction, invite them to just a 10-minute chat. Once you do this, what you're doing is you're establishing a network, a connection. Don't drop the ball. Keep following up. Make your first connection. Have your 10-minute exchange. Let 2-3 weeks go by. Something exciting's happened in your world that makes, again, another connection for you to reach back. Hey, I just learned this new remote collaboration tool that you guys are working on, and I can see why you find it so exciting and helpful. And I just used it in this project. Again, you're back in their mind. And then maybe another 2-3 weeks goes by. They've posted another great an opportunity. You wanted to reach out to talk a little bit more about it. So you're always there, kind of, hello, so that they don't forget you. But you've got to do it at the same time where it's like you're very walking the line of not becoming annoying, but still excited. And that's something that you monitor over time. But yes, those are some things that you can expect. Also be aware that given the pandemic, the recruiters and hiring managers are getting inundated with this, and they're getting burnt out, and they're having a hard time deciding who they're going to reach back to. And they don't want to be rude, but it's a lot for them as well. So give them grace and let them know that You may not be necessarily looking for the job, but the connection too. Okay. So remember that at the end of the day, we're people, and people need space, and people also need time to recharge.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
Next question. Have you noticed a change in requirement for master's degrees since the pandemic has started?
Ooh, that is very interesting question. Not just master's degrees specifically, but all degrees. We are seeing a lot of companies being a lot more lenient and flexible when it comes to degrees. And a lot of our clients at FlexJobs, have worked a lot and have no degree. So something that we kind of recommend is if you don't have a degree yet and you're kind of questioning, oh, should I get this master's degree? Is now a good time? Always kind of research that role and that company first to see if it's really necessary, similar to what Tracy was just talking about with researching or reaching out to recruiters, is finding someone at the company or in a position on LinkedIn who's doing what you want to be doing, and reaching out to them and kind of asking them, hey, do you have 10 minutes to tell me a little bit about what you do, and how you got here, and any tips for someone who wants to, do this role. That person can be a really great resource to tell you, no, you definitely don't need the master's. It says preferred on this application, but we have tons of people who don't have one, and here are other skills, or here's other tools or resources that would help you get this job instead of that degree. Degrees are expensive. I have a master's degree. I know Tracy does as well. I don't regret getting it, but I've had jobs where I didn't use it. So definitely something you want to consider before taking that leap and spending the money to get another degree is figuring out if it's actually necessary. Are there other certifications or other online courses that you can take instead? Or if you get offered a position at that company, is that something the company would potentially pay for you? If you say, I'm interested in this, I don't have this skill, or I don't have this degree yet, but I'm considering it, sometimes employers will actually pay for that for you. So definitely do a little bit of digging and research to figure out if it's really necessary before you take that leap of doing it. Asking people who are currently doing the role, or asking, people who work at that company if it's actually necessary. But we've seen a lot of companies be more flexible about, we'd rather have someone who's flexible, adaptable, and a fast learner, and willing to kind of just jump right in right away, and you're going to be moldable and we can train you, rather than having that degree. So don't kind of fret if it's not something that you have or don't have yet, because there are kind of some options out there. Now, granted, if you're in a very specialized area, engineering or architecture or whatever it might be, that that's a requirement or a specific certification, that's a different story. But we're seeing a trend of less focus on degrees, more focus on that you're flexible, adaptable, and a fast learner, and willing to jump right in and get started.
Yes, and I'm going to kind of piggyback off that. I just sent and she put it in, Paulina put it in, but LinkedIn has gotten together and they've created a great skills compilation page that you can go to for making a pivot into different types of careers or sectors, piggybacking off of the skills that you have, and then skills that you want to learn. And so also when thinking about different kinds of degrees and certifications, they don't always have to be done in a formalized setting. We're finding that a lot of skills learned through like Udemy online, or I think it's called
Coursera.
Coursera, yep. Mm-hmm. And then there's another one out there, General Knowledge, or they have I can't remember that one, but there are several different kind of formalized, informal skills that you can learn, certifications that you can put on your resume as well. And then you can highlight that is online virtual studies platforms. Again, remote work doesn't have to always be actual work. It can be studies. It can be self-study, self-professional development, things like that. So you can include that as well. And we're finding, as what Sydney said, companies do want people that have a growth mindset. And that's another great flex-friendly skill that you want to highlight.
Great. Okay, we have time for one more, and then we will wrap up. And I'm going to combine a couple of questions that are about how to respond to certain questions in an interview pertaining to gaps and
career
pertaining
gaps.
to shorter amounts of times at employers. So how do you answer the question if you have multiple jobs that are just 6 months in each company? How do you answer that without just saying I hated it there? And how do you explain and how do you explain a gap after graduating or between jobs?
Yes, these are great questions, and we talk about these to our clients all the time. So thank you. I'm sure Tracy's going to pull some resources to
I
pop in
am.
the chat as well. Thank you, Tracy. I knew you were.
Yep.
We actually have a template, a PDF that talks about employment gaps and how to address them with examples. So one right now, a lot of people are laid off or furloughed from COVID. So we recommend just putting that right on your resume, addressing it right away. You don't want to leave any kind of questions or concerns for a hiring manager to make assumptions about you based on what is or isn't on your resume. And you want to be in control of the narrative, right? So if you are someone who is laid off, we recommend putting, professionally active career break. One of many people furloughed or laid off due to COVID-19 global pandemic. And in the meantime, I am doing online learning, or I'm pursuing this certification, or I'm, doing XYZ, maintaining like my professionalism and being active during this time. If you are someone who was a stay-at-home mom and you have been home with your kids for several years and you're now, wanting to return to work, putting that on your resume as well. Full-time stay-at-home caregiver, intentional pause to focus on caregiving, but excited and energized to return to work. It doesn't need to be a lot. One bullet or two bullets is perfectly fine, but putting that on your resume, addressing it right away. And then in your cover letter, like Tracy was talking about earlier, you can further share information or further explain yourself there if you wish. And then same thing in your job interview. But employers are going to really kind of respect and appreciate that you're giving that information to them right away. They're not having to seek it out. They're not making assumptions, and they can just, see whatever it was that you were doing. Now, when it comes to jobs with short time periods at them, we also recommend creating an additional related experience section. Two reasons you can create this. One, we recommend for our older clients, we recommend current trends is 10 to 15 years of work experience on your resume, and to combat any potential ageism there, putting the additional related experience section and removing dates. You can also do that for short gaps on your resume as well. So you would create it, additional related experience. You would just put the job title and position in a couple of bullets and just remove the dates altogether, so they're not even included there. Now, depending on if the job is even relevant to what you're applying to, you may not need to include them at all in your position. There's nothing that says every single job you've ever worked has to be on your resume. And typically, if you've had a lot of different jobs, employers really don't want to sift through 3 or 4 pages of all of that. So making sure that you're tailoring your resume to every single position that you're applying to. And if the position that you had that, only a couple of months there isn't really relevant to the position you're applying to, no need to put it there. If it is relevant, then you could go ahead and put it in that additional related experience section there, or you could even put just the years and not the month and the year. Those are a couple of examples of how we recommend going about that. But like I mentioned earlier, you want to make sure that you're kind of controlling that narrative yourself on your resume and in your cover letter and just addressing it right away. It's nothing to kind of shy away from.
And one last thing to answer is if the jobs, let's say they're all 6 months, but they're within the same career theme of office management, office administration, office operations, and it was really the person environment fit. There was a disconnect between the employer. You can lump them under a themed career posting or like a job description. So you would have one job description and give yourself a title, office administration, and then just list the dates. And then underneath that, you're kind of nesting it. You would then list the actual job, the company, and then the dates of that position. And if they were contracted ended or whatever, you could do it that way. We have done this several times, particularly for people who have been in hospitality, and they've bounced around from being servers to bartenders to operations managers. And so you create it under that. And then you can list the dates all in one and break it into individual dates underneath. And then you give a generalized description of that work, and always try to end with some snapshots of results or hard hitters if you have some. And know that those hard hitters do not always have to be numbers. They don't have to end in numbers. So if you were promoted, if you were constantly requested for projects, if you were the person that people always went to for project development, those are great soft hitters to put in that create value and worth just as much as your hard hitters do.
Yes. And one quick thing I just want to add in there too, to the person who asked the question about having multiple jobs. Sometimes, like Tracy mentioned, that can be a sign that you just haven't found the right cultural fit. You haven't meshed well with a company or with an employer. So I'm popping a link into the chat right now. We actually recently published an article a couple of weeks ago about finding the right cultural fit. And just as a final kind of tidbit, when it comes to interviewing, many of you have probably heard this already, but you are interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you. So even though you might really, really want the job, making sure that you're paying attention to any red flags that might pop up, taking the time, like Tracy talked about earlier, to research their social media, see what kinds of things they're posting about, looking on LinkedIn and seeing what their employees are posting about, seeing the turnover on employees on LinkedIn, how many years are people working there, looking on Glassdoor, researching any press or media about the company or organization. All of those things are going to kind of help you so that you're not finding yourself in a situation where you keep ending up at a place that just is totally bad and not the place for you. So this article just kind of points out some of those ways to really figure out the right cultural fit for where you want to work.
Yep. And no, you can always choose to remove yourself from an interview. If you find maybe in a second interview from the first interview, the position was not as advertised, and you think that it's going to be more of a partnership position, and yet it's really a sales-based position, and you're not a sales-based person. And if it's not a fit for you, and if it wasn't advertised, then you can gracefully exit and thank them for that opportunity, and that you really enjoyed it and you think they have a great culture, but they're not a fit for you at this moment. And you tend to get a lot of grace from them, and they'll remember you in a positive manner should another opportunity come available down the line that is a better fit for you. It is a two-way street and a communication between individuals at the bottom line, just like what Sydney was saying. So good.
Thank you so much. We're going to wrap up, but before we do, we want to share a few more things with you. On behalf of UC Santa Cruz, I want to thank you all for joining us today. We are here for you at every step of your career to support you. And I'd like to thank our career coaches, Sydney and Tracy, for presenting today and for supporting the career success of UC Santa Cruz students and alumni. I'd like to remind you of some online mentoring that we have. Alumni are available. Once you've absorbed all the information today, once you're ready to practice your interview, utilize the Career Advice Network. There are hundreds of alumni who offer themselves on a volunteer basis to have career conversations. They will give you practice interview sessions. They will look at your resume and cover letter. There's free coaching and mentorship out there. You just have to access it and utilize them. So as we wrap up today, I want to remind you that there's a special code for FlexJobs and their services. If you're interested in FlexJobs, check them out and use this code. We will again send this presentation out to all those who registered for the event. The Career Success Office also continues to be open for remote coaching. So make an appointment and utilize their services. For alumni, we have all of our services on our websites, and we just launched the Career Coach Directory. So it's Banana Slugs who are alumni who offer special discounts to other Banana Slugs. So check that out. And lastly, I just want to thank our presenters one more time and encourage you all to take the survey that'll pop up on your screen after this is over. Thanks for joining us tonight, and I hope you have a great rest of your evening.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank
great.
you.
Thank you so much, and good luck to everyone in your searches.